Hello, welcome back to One's the Force of Stars podcast. My name is Phill, of course. I'm joined, as usual, by Dave and George. Good evening, gentlemen.
Hello there.
Good evening.
And welcome back to our regular show. Now, we're going to talk something on our topic at the top of the show, but as you've seen, we will be talking about Jar Jar Binks, Jar Jar Best, Ahmed Best this evening. Oh, can't even get all words out already. This is going to be a fun evening. But George, do you want to kind of take us from the top of kind of why we're here today and why we weren't here last week?
Yes, so for those that sort of don't follow social media, we did a post last Tuesday saying at this point in time we'd be doing an episode right now a week ago. Obviously, we haven't seen the news with what's happening around the world, the murder of George Floyd, the protest that's been happening worldwide. Here in England, had massive protests everywhere. Obviously, you've seen John Boyega. It didn't feel right to do a video last week, and that became a very clear trend across not just YouTube channels, but everywhere. No one was in the right atmosphere with everything that's happened. You know, we love Star Wars, so we'll talk about Star Wars. We had a show lined up, and it was this show. We just postponed it a week. Even Jedi Temple Challenge has been postponed a week. Last week it was a write-off in that sense because there are bigger things going on in the world. As much as we do love our escapism, and not to get into it too heavily, but Star Wars is based off real-life politics. George Lucas made that clear from day one. So obviously our thoughts with everybody right now, of course, everyone at home anyway that's not got corona, everyone that's at home isolating, wrong words. Obviously those protesting the streets, absolutely, I'm spot on, I'm there with you. Just make sure you stay safe, and I guess it's fair to chuck in a beware the you know who, anyone that could be up to mischief. So our thoughts with America. It's a very difficult intro, especially the video we're doing. Pretty difficult topic this week. There's going to be some very sort of I think things said from the heart, because we are going to be talking about Ahmed Best. Obviously, Jedi Temple Challenge is coming out today. It's not actually dropped yet. I did check before live. I've actually had to subscribe to Star Wars Kids now. Did not realise that's where Galaxy of Adventures was. I thought it was a Twitter thing. But fair play. They'll get a lot of subscribers now this week. I think they're going to get a lot. And there's going to be a lot of jealous people as well because we can't play it too. But yeah, we're going to talk about Ahmed Best. We're going to go all the way back to 99. Well, maybe even before then, 98. We're going to talk about the prequels. Ahmed Best on his journey from a Gungan to Jedi Master, which is very exciting because one of the most interesting actors in the Star Wars world, with one of the most sort of it is a very tragic what happened over the 20 years, but there is a story and there is a journey, which is why we're talking about it. So that's a very weird way to kick off. But yeah, how should we do this, guys? Because we've not really planned this fully. I've just gone from a very deep start to a deep.
Indeed, no, you've handled it well. As I say, it was an introduction that was not going to be an easy one to do. But yes, we're going to crack on with the video itself. Before we do that, I'm just going to echo your thoughts though as well, George. Of course, our thoughts are with everyone in the US as well as here at home. We do support you, and although, as you said, stay safe. Make sure you social distance and wear your mask, but stand up for what you believe in. And the theme tonight is doing what you believe in, also people's journeys and people's beliefs and how it can go from hate through to being re-embraced. And we'll talk about that as we go along. But yes, tonight's episode is going to be a cool one, I must admit, because Ahmed Best is one of the most polarizing figures in Star Wars history. I think it's very fair to say that. Not that it's his fault, it's just the character of Jar Jar at the time was not well received amongst the fans at now the age when it comes to the sequels. This is a very interesting comparison. We, of course, have the sequel trilogy fans who, of course, say, "Oh, this isn't my Star Wars." Now, with the prequel, I wasn't back at the time. It's a case of this isn't my Star Wars, having the prequel haters against the original trilogy lovers. And of course, so he's gone from Jar Jar Binks to this new Temple Run. And of course, I've been working out a way to kind of look younger, but with my greying hair and my long ass beard, I just don't quite think I can cut the mustard to be able to enter the Temple Run. And it's one of those things, actually, when it was very first announced, I remember on this show saying how I was not particularly enamored with the idea, but then now I've seen it a little bit more. Now I've seen the trailers and kind of seen what it's about. You know what? I'm okay with it. I'm actually kind of happy for it. So it'd be interesting to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm envious. I don't care. When they announced the show, I mean, you're certainly in England. Obviously, every country has their own kids' game shows. My generation had one called, I think it was called, was it Jungle Run?
Jungle Run for the win.
This is literally the exact same, but as Star Wars. And you know what? Yeah. I think they did a right thing moving. I know we're jumping in quickly. I think they've done the right thing going from Disney Plus to Star Wars Kids. Makes it far more accessible. It's not hidden behind a paywall. It makes it easier to reach that designated audience. It's going to do that channel itself well. People will find other Star Wars content through it. And also, kids are going to love it. It's a game show. If kids haven't seen Star Wars, this could be their introduction to it. And that's the beauty of Star Wars, is that, we've gone about how many Star Wars generations are out. I had one of my friends text me last week saying, I sent him sort of meme of the Darth Maul from Clone Wars. He goes, I don't remember Clone Wars being this dark. So I used to watch that on Saturday mornings. So I was like, Christ, like that was your introduction to Star Wars. Like Clone Wars on a Saturday morning. And, it's cool. But you forget like how sort of generational Star Wars is, that, not everyone watched the originals or the prequels to get into it. They all had their own roots, and there will be kids that find it through this, and that's kind of really cool because it's a game show.
And I love the fact as well. I'm quite looking forward to the show. I think I was quite vocal when it came out that I was really looking forward to actually seeing it. It harkens back to those old game shows that we used to have when I was a kid, like, well, there's Fun House and things like that, and Nightmare and brilliant shows like that when I was younger. And yeah, I think it's gonna be a great show, like for kids who are gonna find Star Wars this way. And I think you're right, for Ahmed Best to get to this point now, to be brought in as a Jedi is, well, so we'll get to towards the end of this podcast, I'm sure. But if we harken back to it on 99, we're all sat down in a cinema. I know I certainly did. Opening night, midnight showing, episode 1. Off you go, a new Star Wars journey, and introduced fairly early on to who was built up as this huge new character who was going to play this huge new role. And for me personally, I was 99. I was 20 when it came out. Did not land right with me at all when it came on. A character I could not get away with.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I was 8 years old. I'd had the novelization of episode 1 read to me before the film came out, actually. So that was an introduction to me before the film, the film. And my mother did the voice of Jar Jar. Actually, did it spot on before we even heard what he was. So I went in with a kind of preconception anyway of what I thought the character was going to be. Of course, I was 8 at the time. Sorry, Dave, to make you feel a little bit older there. Of course, I'm older than George, so he's going to make me feel old again. Yes, I was 8 at the time. So for me, in 1999, because I did enjoy the character of Jar Jar, and I did enjoy the prequels, of course, as it came out. Of course, it's one of those things, of course, after episode 1, his role declined and then declined again from 2 to 3. And of course, we all know the story of him giving the emergency powers to the Chancellor. It's all Jar Jar's fault, but not Ahmed Best's fault. And that's kind of the thing we were talking about tonight.
Yeah, I mean, let's divert it. I was 3 when this came out. I've said that too many times. Don't like it. It's 20 years old, and that hit me. So I had a very interesting relationship with Jar Jar as a kid because I wasn't the biggest fan. I was the prime age range for the character of Jar Jar Binks, but I, for some reason, adored Liam Neeson and Anakin. Maybe I was speciest, but as a 3-year-old kid, I didn't like Chewbacca that much either. Like, it was very strange at that age where I didn't connect necessarily to that age. I was never scared or never put off. I just never had that connection to them now, which is very strange because, it's a giant dog. It's this bumbling buffoon that kids love, and kids did love him. And the crazy thing is, I had merch of him. I had the famous Jar Jar Binks backpack that hung on my wall till I was probably 12 years old. It's in the garage. It's safe. I still had Jar Jar Binks toys. I had a weird toy set where his face was the toy set, and you'd open it up, and there was like different things, like a little dollhouse type thing. It was very strange, but I had a very interesting relationship because obviously as well, I didn't know people disliked him. I didn't know anything about the real life side. I didn't even really think why he had less of a role in the other films, because I think back then, when I was 6 in Attack of the Clones, 9 with Revenge of the Sith, you didn't know the real life context of things. You didn't know that people disliked him. I just thought that was his story arc, and that's why he didn't come back. Well, not come back, but that's why he reduced roles. So obviously, you grow up in realities, which is kind of heartbreaking. I won't lie. And then you also grow up and you realize that he's one of the most important characters in the history of cinema. Maybe is it too soon to jump into the motion capture stuff? But
no.
Go for it, that's all.
I met Ahmed Best last year, and I told him I've said this to 2 people in my life. I wrote an essay at university, and you were featured heavily in it. So that's 2 people, Ahmed Best and Andy Serkis. Everyone goes to Gollum, Caesar, King Kong, Godzilla. Andy Serkis, all of them in the CV. He set up his own motion capture studio. It's really fantastic. But Jar Jar Binks was the first ever fully motion capture character. I'm sure you've all seen. I should have got the pin badge. It's right there in the cabinet. You've also seen the behind the scenes photo. He's wearing the kind of like visor sunglasses. He's in the costume. He's got the feet, and he's got the thing on top of his head. That's one of the most important sort of foundings of the last 20 years. Look at how cinema's developed, and not to get into too much of a cinematic sort of traveling thing, but it all stems back to that moment. You know, Jar Jar doesn't work, Gollum doesn't work. And when I say work is the technology, not necessarily the character and the character arc.
Well, yeah, if you look at Jar Jar compared to Maz Kanata from 7 and 8, I mean, it's just chalk and cheese. Yes, it's the same technology, but that technology, of course, is 20, 13 years newer. It's insane.
And then you look at, I mean, you've all seen the documentary as well. Like George Lucas, like, I didn't need to buy a $500,000 suit after all. It's this really awkward laugh, but you can tell that Lucas is actually fuming. But even to that, like, sorry to jump into talking about the tech, but when you look at the performance, you know, look at Ahmed's career. He was in Stomp, which was like a really big sort of thing in the sort of early to late 90s, and that's all sort of dance movement. And you think motion capture, you know, he wasn't just a bloke just walking around. Like Jar Jar has his own walking mechanism, the sort of the loose arms, the legs, the sort of not to say it's Stomp, but
yeah,
it's very specific. And again, that was motion capture where he didn't walk like a human and just get animated. He became this other species, this other character. And that's why, as time's gone by, I've grown to not necessarily love him for that, but I've just gone to respect it more and more and more. And also, we'll get into it later on with some of the prequel reaction stuff, but Jar Jar is probably one of the most interesting characters in cinema. And the downside is it becomes that one of the most important characters, but did have that sideline. But at the end of the day, he was made for 3-year-olds.
Yeah.
And a lot of kids absolutely adore it.
Of course, there is one scene where you actually have the suit. There's one hand, and that's the real bit. The rest of it, no, here's all your mocap stuff. Sorry, Dave, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I think what George is saying, just to repeat on really the back of it, I think it's really important if you do get a chance to watch, if you haven't for any reason seen the beginning, the documentary from the making of episode 1. It is incredible. It does show you how they put this thing to George Lucas went to the animators and ILM, and this is you, and this is you. And then realized, right, we're doing a fully realized CGI character. And it's quite incredible at that point that it hadn't been done. It was just kind of handed to them to say, right, this is what I want you to do. Yeah. Go off and figure it out. The reason is that Phill was saying they had this really expensive suit made so Ahmed Best could wear it, and they would just they were looking to do just a neck replacement. I think it's said in one of the scenes in there where they actually go, you know what, it's easier for us to just actually take the whole character out rather than just paint a head on the frame.
Yeah.
And I think it's this massive step forward in technology at that point that took this huge leap. And yes, now you look back and it does date a little bit. You can sort of see around the edges a little bit that it's not quite right, doesn't quite sit against the frame. But that's, you know, technology does that. Every film you go back 10 years where they're trying to do something with computer graphics or something like that, it stands out from the scene very to the point now it's getting less and less, but it really stands out there. But for that big a leap to be given to a movie that was coming out, that was Star Wars, that hadn't been on screens since Return of the Jedi, this was a massive return to make a big risk, I would say, putting this character in there. But you then also kind of come back to, there was an actor who was in that role who not had it taken away from him. Well, maybe he did a little bit in the second and third movie, but to go in there, put your performance in, and then to have it replaced completely with the CGI, like you say, Phil, it was one hand taken out in the pod race when he's trying to release his hand from that. It just, at that point, you start to even, not then, but now see this point of like, oh, that even at that point, he was probably losing that character a little bit from himself. It was kind of being taken a little bit away from Ahmed and more to, we can do this all on computer. We don't really need this actor behind it.
Yeah, well, that was the early stage though, because now we have the mocap more integrated. The actor is much more the character than they were when this all started up. I mean, Gollum was really the one that broke the mold, but when you had Jar Jar create the mold, that's the interesting point. And of course, now when you have it, you do watch it today. And I know, George, recently you've watched the 4K sets. I'm going to ask you something in a second about this, but the one thing I've noticed before we continue more about Jar Jar and more about Ahmed's journey is that scene where you have the hand now looks so out of place comparatively to the suit. Yes, okay, the CG is not what it is today. And of course, we talk about, as Dave just said there, about them being handed on a plate. Here's a new technology. Well, they just had that in the Mandalorian with the volume. It's that same level of here you go. This is Star Wars. This is big. Here, I want this done. Try this. But yes, George, take me through watching it on 4K and how it now does stack up.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. The first shot when Qui-Gon's running in the jungle, swamp thing, it stands out. And it's not the character's fault or anything like that. That is the technology of 1999 versus 2020. And to be fair to Lucas, when the DVDs came out, he gave it a little tinsel. When the Blu-rays came out, he did a big CGI change. And when I say CGI change, nothing actually changed. It was more of a remaster and upgrade, because you can look at the DVD versus Blu-ray. There's a big difference. 4K versus Blu-ray. Not saying there's a big difference as such, but they haven't. I'm not saying they haven't put the budget in, because they have, but they haven't individually gone to a CGI character and decided, I'm going to spend a couple of grand on you to get you a little bit better.
But maybe that's for the best, though. They've not gone and messed with anything apart from go, here's McClunky, which is a subject we will talk about another day.
Yeah, it's more the fact that when Lucas did it in 2011, it bought it more time. It kept it looking modern. I know that it's 99 and stuff, but obviously look at George Lucas. He always just strived for not necessarily perfection, but what he thought was the best thing, and making them little changes. Look at Jabba the Hutt. We know it's one of the worst special edition changes, but you look at the original special edition Jabba the Hutt, and then you look
I have to?
And then you look at what they did to the DVDs, and you think, okay, he didn't need to. I mean, he didn't need to be there anyway, but because he didn't like it, he's like, okay, I can make this look better, and he did, and he did that in 2011, and it's not really a massive criticism. It's not important to the film and stuff, but Jar Jar in full body shots in human environments looked outdated for the first time on that 4K transfer. Looked bloody amazing in 2 and 3 for the short scenes he's in, because at that point, you look at the changes of 3 years technology, maybe even that window of 99 to 05 probably had the most radical CGI changes of cinema compared to anything that's came since. That sort of 5-6 year burst where everything went digital, CGI became big, look at the Spider-Man film, stuff like that. That was like, boom, here's CG. Again, a cinema debate, then you get towards the end of the sort of noughties, and it's like, oh, too much CGI is now going into places, and obviously now 2015, 2020, it's, we'll use CGI, but we're going to use as little CGI as possible, because that was what it was brought in for, to do arena environments with CGI to assist it. So it's that in a really interesting period now that you got to argue the Phantom Menace and Jar Jar's a catalyst in that.
Indeed. I mean, there's plenty to talk about when it comes to the technology side, but I want to move us on to talking about kind of the reaction to Jar Jar and his reduced roles in episode 2 and 3 due to the backlash. He was, of course, meant to be the Chewbacca of the trilogy. He's supposed to have this big role, and yes, he has some very important scenes, as I alluded to earlier, with the whole giving the emergency powers to the Chancellor when he suddenly looks a million years old. There are certain story beats where he is important, and actually in Clone Wars, I think they do him a better service, giving him more to do, giving him actual plot lines. Yes, okay, you still play on the movement and the mannerisms and talking of Jar Jar, but they give him more of the role he should have had in those films. So we'll talk about episode 2 and episode 3, especially by the time you get to episode 3. There's barely Jar Jar at all. I think he's in 4 scenes.
He gets a burp and excuse me, doesn't he?
Yeah.
It's sad because there was a nasty reaction to it. I mean, there's the famous social media post from my best in 2018 where he said it's 20 years ago next year that I think he was with his son at a landmark in New York, and he goes, "This is the spot where I meant to commit suicide because of the media reaction to the Phantom Menace." And I think that hit a lot of people that day. And I know it's kind of jumped ahead, but speak about the reaction after episode 1. That was it. I was so young, and even all of us I don't think would have been at the not age, but the knowledge we have now compared to then. Social media wasn't a big thing. We weren't in the States, which is where no doubt it was probably worse than ever. If you think about it, when he mentions the abuse he had in 1999, I'm not saying they couldn't have got to him. There's no Twitter, there's no Facebook. It's a lot harder to abuse someone in that era, which makes it worse because it was probably like the in-person letters in the post.
We had, of course, in the modern equivalent is what happened to Kelly Marie Tran after episode 8, and comparatively, imagine if that had been happened, but for Ahmed, that would have been. I can't imagine.
Exactly, and she got hounded off social media. Not to get into a social media thing, obviously Lucasfilm did release a statement about John Boyega last week, but obviously you got some cynics saying, where was your statement in 2017 with Kelly Marie Tran? And, wrong conversation for a different time, but those questions are there, and even Star Wars, again, I can't give my thoughts on that because I didn't really know until years and years went by, and then you realize that, hold on, these reduced roles weren't that they didn't have the story for him, it's that they just avoided telling the story. And you mentioned Kelly Marie Tran, perfect. Again, let's jump to episode 9. Was it 1.5 minutes of screen time?
Yeah, something like that.
Something along those lines, yeah.
When in April last year, JJ said, and I do like JJ, I'm not doing this as an easy dig, but he said one of the best things Rian Johnson left me was Kelly Marie Tran. I was like, well, okay, then thanks for the 1.5 minutes of screen time.
Yeah.
I know stuff gets put on the cutting room floor, but they've not released any of this stuff on the cutting room floor, have they? So how are we meant to know what the reality of it was, except obviously interviews, but different conversations, but similarities in different generations. The people giving the abuse, there's those in 99, 20 years later, they're still doing the same thing to the next trilogy because there's things they don't like. And us three, we're quite positive in our own sense. We do have our own opinions. We've got stuff we like and dislike about these films, don't get me wrong, but we've never been on that bandwagon of, flaming pitchfork, isn't it? It's that sort of nonsense. Yeah. So there is a time to avoid stuff like that. And when it's these people, they're playing a character and no one's going to, especially 9 times, no one's going to say no to being in a Star Wars film, are they? Forget 9 times. No one's going to say no to being in a Star Wars film at any point over that sort of 10, 15 years. The only person who's in decline is Christian Bale. And we've got Woody Harrelson instead, who I don't think Christian Bale could have done Beckett as well. I love Christian Bale and I would love to see him in a Star Wars film, but that's the only big name I've seen turn down Star Wars.
I watched Le Mans 1966 last night and was reminded of how good an actor he is. And yes, it would be cool if he's in Star Wars, but I actually think I would, now watching it back, definitely prefer Woody Harrelson in the role of Beckett, for sure.
Get Christian's own film. Sorry.
No,
that's different topic, isn't it?
I was just about to jump onto the change in Jar Jar's story from what he had, we don't kind of know the ins and outs of what they were planning for his character, and what would have been more, I guess, would just been more scenes around him being with Anakin and Padme and being more part of that main group. For him to then get reduced down to the introduction of him Anakin to Padme in episode 2, and then he's kind of ushered away by Padme at one point in that movie where he takes on the responsibility, says, I'm sure you've got other stuff to do, and kind of ushers him out, like, just get out now, Jar Jar. Yeah. And then you're right, in 3, it's kind of an excuse me as he gets passed by on a landing platform. It's like, oh, okay, then that's all you're getting. And the final, these at the funeral scene as well. But that reduction in role from what has to be from fan backlash, and that seems to me is where that was maybe the wrong way to take it. I don't think a director maybe these days would even go, you know what, I don't really care what you want to say, this is my vision for my film. But I do think it was taken more to heart of, like, this is a Star Wars movie and I want as many people to see this as possible. And while it's always been George Lucas's thing, look, this is a film for children, then, and I get that, it absolutely is. We shouldn't be discussing it as, especially me as a 41-year-old man, but I would have liked that George maybe stuck to the guns of that a bit more and held on to the character. Now, totally, when 2 and 3 came out, I was quite happy with the reduced role when I saw them as I say, a mid-20-year-old. That was fine that Jar Jar disappeared, but looking back now, I kind of wish they'd had the just to say, look, this is the character, this is the plan we have for him, we're going to keep him anyway. Yes, there's backlash, but let's just put him in. And I feel that is kind of where it probably affected Ahmed. Certainly at the start, I know he was getting all the backlash from episode 1, but then to not be included as well in this trilogy of films, which was probably told when he got the job, you're going to be right through these movies and you'll be this big character. And seeing the drop off in screen time he gets kind of adds to that backlash of people who then have an opinion, feeling their opinion was right because of the actions of the director, not then using that character so much. And I think that's kind of to the detriment of George Lucas a little bit over that. And you can't lay the blame solely at his feet that he wanted this film to succeed. But yeah, it just feels that maybe that was a turn he shouldn't have quite made.
Well, mate, is it George or is it Fox? That's what's the.
Oh, it's George owns them. Come on, like no one. The whole point of Star Wars became no one tells George Lucas how to do Star Wars.
I know, but I have to play devil's advocate. On
Yeah, no, I get it.
the point.
That's the thing. I mean, you speak about George. He's the most obviously because of what happened when he filmed American Graffiti, THX, all that sort of stuff. He's very protective of his franchise, and when people he's very stubborn. I think stubborn's probably the best word in the last few years. That's what as you grow up and realize, hold on, this is the guy that not to sound like I'm digging, but this is the guy that won't let Han Solo shoot first again in 4 different versions because McClunky is the final George Lucas version as well.
Yeah,
he won't allow it, but he wants to get rid of the Gungan. Not wants to. I don't think wants to at all. Sorry, wrong word. I don't think he would have wanted to reduce his role, but I think Lucas probably did it for the better. I think also when you take into account Ahmed Best that obviously we didn't know about the suicide stuff until 2-3 years ago. No one did. That shocked a lot of people. I think that woke a lot of people up about how their actions are online, how they come across. And I'm, again, hypothetical. I'm not going to sit here speculating. It's the wrong kind of thing to speculate. I'm quite sure George Lucas probably knew a lot of the time of what he'd been through and what he was going through. And that's why when you jump back to Attack of the Clones, you get this really nice little neat cameo, same Anthony Daniels of him in the nightclub, in makeup. I've had you in your motion capture. Daniels, I've had you in your robot costume. Now, even if it's for one shot, I want both of you to be in this. And that's the kind of thing I can see George Lucas doing is he's looking out for them in that sense. Don't think Daniels probably needed it as much. It's more of a status thing. But certainly, if Ahmed Best, you didn't know. I didn't notice it for years and years. I was like, oh my god, is that Ahmed Best? And then once I Googled it, it's like, yeah, he's got his own Wikipedia as they all do. So I really like that. And even with episode 3, reduced role. Now, obviously, we don't know how he would have been planned and written and stuff. I guess what we could make the argument of is that in 2 and 3, it goes from not helpless adventures to sort of all these people are in need. This is a coming together under circumstances to here's an elaborate Jedi scheme. I think it's harder to bring him into that. Obviously, I think they did as much as they could with the second one. And then the problem with making him do the supreme powers is that it's the whole stupidity angle. But then you never know. That's Lucas kind of laughing. Like, they all hate Jar Jar, so why not let Jar Jar be the one that gives the powers over? And even to the special edition cut of episode 6, when there's now a Gungan screaming, "Wesa free," I think that's definitely a George Lucas middle finger, which I completely endorse to a lot of people that dislike it. But yeah, it's a shame because, again, like I said, I wasn't the biggest fan as a 3-year-old, but I reckon I'd be quite gutted if I was a humongous fan at the age of 3. And you got this character who, the film's marketed around massively. He's this new big thing. There's toys the toys probably, after Maul, it was probably Jar Jar that had the most amount of toys that year.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then imagine he just disappears and there's nothing in the next 2.
I mean, there's no series of Jar Jar.
No, there's not. There's been talk of it for a while. They're slowly getting through to the prequels. Now they've got the nice artwork. I'll take a Jar Jar thumbs up one.
Oh, yes! Yes!
All want that.
But yeah, it's kind of sad. But then I guess with the journey, we're kind of at the episode 3 is kind of the halfway point. I guess we could say it's not even like an end of chapter 1. It's slap bang like the halfway point on the best journey. I don't know if anyone else has got anything to say before we kind of briefly get into Clone Wars and Robot Chicken.
No, I'm all good.
No, I think, kind of covered onto that. And then you're right, we've got this big gap of those films finishing. And then suddenly Ahmed Best was starting to be used again. And his voice started cropping up when people were starting to use Jar Jar. And I think that's a really nice, it was kind of surprising. I think it was Robot Chicken the first one where he redid his voice?
So. I think
before he went back to Lucas. I think
it was before Clone Wars. Yeah, I think it was. I think he did Robot. Yeah. I have to check it. He did a fair few Robot Chicken sketches, but the most famous one is the Jar Jar Darth Vader one.
Yes.
And the thing with Robot Chicken is that you didn't just get Ahmed Best. You had Mark Hamill come in and do lines. You had George Lucas come in and do lines. It was probably, to me, the best Star Wars sort of mockery there's ever been. That's not like a meme. That was like, here's an officially funded thing. Like Family Guy's trilogy was great. But by the time he gets the third one, like, isn't Corey kind of bored? But not Chicken Run. No, I've got complete
Star Wars
Robot
Chicken Run. It's something I want to see.
Robot Chicken just got it right, and that's it. Bringing Jar Jar in, and the thing is, it was so self-aware. That was, I kind of took it. Obviously, people take it differently. I'm best like, hey, we're gonna do this joke about Jar Jar Binks because we know people don't like Jar Jar Binks, but I think at the time of 2009, it wasn't as bad a situation as maybe 10 years before. And it was kind of, hey, we're doing this really funny series. George Lucas really likes it. Do you want to come and do a voice? I think it probably went like that. And they probably said, we're going to have a laugh. It's not going to be like nasty to you, because it's not really nasty, is it? It's kind of, if anyone's not seen it, I'd love to play it, but it would get done for copyright. But
yes, we would.
He literally just stalks Darth Vader. He trucks him out the airlock. And then the punchline is that Jar Jar comes back as a Force ghost, and he's just like screaming Annie in his sleep. It's so self-aware. It's so bonkers. It's funny, and I can imagine Ahmed Best having a good time doing that. And as we mentioned, George Lucas went on. He did his stuff, and Robot Chicken was a big success to the point they got given their own Star Wars show before the Disney takeover. Now we know it's never seen the light of day. There's concept art out there.
Was it Star Detours?
Detours.
Yeah. I would have rather they just bought Robot Chicken and just carried on doing that, but that was the point. And then you get Clone Wars, where I think there's the one episode where Ahmed Best doesn't do it. I don't know if it was the first one.
I think it is the first one.
And then
he's back one of them where it's not him, and then he was brought back in.
No, I think that's where not the cogs are turning, because it's not like it's a video game. This was real life, but it's the George Lucas. Hey, Ahmed, we're doing this. Do you want to come back to Lucasfilm and do some voices for Jar Jar? And it's not only, you're not going to have a one-line dialogue, you're going to have like episodes where you are the main character.
Have the droid.
Yeah, and people have their thoughts about those episodes. I'm not going to lie, like Bombad Jedis.
I genuinely, I really like it.
I'm not the biggest fan of Bombad. I love the one with Grievous, where but it gets to a point where Clone Wars is getting darker, but they're still giving Jar Jar Binks episodes. And I think there's the famous Dave Filoni interview where he kind of says, I'd be sat there and George Lucas would be like, let's do another Jar Jar episode, and Dave Filoni would kind of nervously laugh and say, really? And it's George Lucas, isn't it? The Jar Jar Binks episode gets made.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's so much, and again, I'm the best coming back to that, because it's and that's the thing. I think he knew as well. Ewan McGregor said this as years have gone by. I think a lot of them have. They didn't realize the story Lucas was telling, that it was kid orientated. I think Ewan McGregor said it first about 2 years ago, that I spent so many years kind of not regretting it, but he's kind of said I spent years not liking it, and then I had that generation grow up where everyone in the street was telling me how much they loved it. They grew up with it. I think that's when he said that's when I realized like what Star Wars is like. It is for kids, and I think Ahmed Best had that from day one. I think he knew what he was doing. He knew he was playing a goofy character that 3-year-olds are going to love. There's going to be toys of him. He's going to come back in Clone Wars. He's going to still be the same goofy character. They're not going to change him up, make him too smart, make him too stupid. They're going to keep him exactly as he was, and Lucas stuck to that. And I think that's where, again, you can build out that legacy. Clone Wars made a big difference to a lot of people. Kids grew up with the Clone Wars, as we've said today, and they would have seen Jar Jar Binks through that, and they'll have their own thoughts on him. But I think Ahmed Best is probably very aware of that's what Lucas was doing.
Yeah, agreed. And it's one of those things. So with Clone Wars, yes, as you say, got darker over time. It's one of those things with Rebels as well. Start off light, end up dark. Resistance, same thing. Start off light, end up dark. It got to the gritty part, got to the storytelling, but Jar Jar was still integral to the storytelling, even though he was in the later episodes.
No, exactly.
And
I'm just saying, it's just this massive step for them to start bringing him back into the fold, which is a really nice thing. Especially, I think as well, they had I can't remember which book it's in, but they do mention Jar Jar's life. He would become some street clown.
So that's in Aftermath Life Debt. He does end up as a clown on the streets of Naboo, and it's a very sad ending for the character.
So whether I think that'll get changed at some point, I really do. But we shall see. But yeah, it was so nice that they started bringing him back in the fold. And this is well before everything was kind of given about what had happened, what he'd gone through with his decisions of not going off that bridge. And it's just, it started to see that he was going to be brought back into the Star Wars family. I think people had appreciated the return of him as well at that point.
Yeah. And once we use that as a jumping off point to talk about Star Wars Celebration 2019, George, I'm definitely going to hand this one off over to you.
Yeah, my bad. I was meant to upload the. I've got the video footage of him coming out in that panel that I was in the main room.
Yeah.
And basically, I'm going to jump back to Hayden first at 2017, where they did the 40th anniversary of Star Wars. And basically what happened with that one was he came out and no one knew how they'd react. It was his first public appearance at a convention. The way that reaction went was incredible. He looked nervous when he walked out, and that was it. The moment they started cheering, he looked comfortable. I'd never witnessed that fully, ever. Obviously, different Orlando, right? We're all watching at home. We're on our screens, we can see him close up. Get to 2019, with the town say, we're going to do a panel on the Phantom Menace. And we already knew Ahmed was going to be there. It was going to be his first ever signing. They said he'd be in this panel. Obviously, we were disappointed with the special guests because there wasn't any, except the really cool behind-the-scenes Lucasfilm staff. We just got the bog standard, not to disrespect anyone, but everyone that we knew would turned up. There was no guest. There was a 1-minute Instagram video from George Lucas. I won't forget that part. But anyway, moving on. When Ahmed Best came out, everyone was chanting. And it's funny because I always say I'm not big with chanting at cinema, stuff like that. I did it at Last Jedi because everyone was in it. Didn't really happen as much during Rise of Skywalker when we were there at midnight. Certainly not me, but just it was a different kind of film. It didn't have the moments to get everyone pumping. But I think the big thing with this one was when he came out, no one knew. I don't think he knew how people would react. To me, that was his first appearance. He's probably done many conventions before and stuff, but on that global scale, it hadn't been done. And it was such a nice moment. I think he stopped. I'm not going to sit and say he cried. I don't know any of that. I don't know if he did or if he didn't, but it was a really nice moment. And as someone, I'm not going to sit here and say, "Oh, I still liked in 2019." Not at all. I've been fine with Jar Jar most of my life. It's the people that gave the abuse, the ones that are probably sitting there silent, saying, "Oh, maybe we were too harsh." I was like, well, "Yes, you all were," because it's the man that almost when he did that post on Instagram saying what happened. Suddenly, had a lot of people pretending that they'd never said anything bad about Jar Jar Binks. Them kind of people. But anyway, it was a really nice reaction last year. I think if anyone deserved it, it was him. Everyone standing up on their feet to applaud him, chanting his name. I think not to 180 it. You do not forget what people have said in the past, and it's almost impossible not to. But it was this really sort of full circle moment of not the acceptance of the character or anything like that, but this was the kind of everyone's there for you, like they respect you, they actually just adore you, and it was that's what I got out of that. And I think indirectly where we're at now with Jedi Temple Challenge, I think Celebration last year was this really big moment, probably for him, for the fans, for people watching. They didn't realize that people like this guy, the obvious person that knows a bit about Star Wars, not too much, a bit of Jar Jar Binks is the one that everyone hates. They'll probably say video go, wait, where's everyone applauding for him, cheering for him? Because they won't know what he's been through. And even doing the convention after, like I said before, I got to meet him. I was really happy to meet him. I loved the motion capture. I like Ahmed Best, and he was really good with his fans as I imagined him to be. He kind of spoke in the past that he always had the idea for a one-man Star Wars show where it'd be him talking about his life, and that is what I know we're going to get. He's said it for a while that I think he's been in production about a year and a half where Frank Oz is directing it and helping him do it. And then when it's ready, they're going to tour. I think he said to me when I asked him, "Are you going to go to England?" He said, "He'll definitely be in London." I think they're going to do a tour of America, then probably a couple of things in Europe or in the UK. But this is someone that, if you just said that 5 years ago, no one would have believed you that he'd get this. But this is right now that this could go ahead, this can happen. And the thing is, he's got a story to tell. And he said he wouldn't hide anything. He'd talk about the good, the bad, and everything. And I think it's really fitting that he is probably one of the people that you put down every Star Wars cast member, on the stage. His story is going to be more interesting than probably 90% of them.
It's one of those things, though. If as when it does happen, especially comes to London, the three of us will be there. There is no ifs, buts, or doubts about that. We will all be there.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think he said that they were aiming to do it this year, but obviously with COVID, they probably just delayed any form of announcement or venue stuff because I think he was ready to do it. But what we now have, jumping off that, is Jedi Temple Challenge, which actually premiered 30 minutes ago, 10 minutes after we pressed the button. So
I have a question to put to you guys. Do we think that Temple Run was in pre-production and they didn't have a host, and maybe after Celebration they offered it to him? Because I think they probably had in mind, and after seeing that reaction, they kind of pulled the trigger.
I mean, because the guy that's producing Temple Challenge is the producer of the Star Wars show, and he said he's wanted a children's show for years. I think there was probably a concept that no one had ticked off yet, and I wouldn't say it's a celebration. I think Star Wars as a hierarchy, as a company, have been looking out for him for quite a while. I think if you're a producer and the idea's there, you get a likable person that's attached to the franchise. I don't think people would be looking forward to this. And I know this sounds mental, but you could get an A-list actor that's never done Star Wars. Yeah, Chris Pratt would be really funny to host a Star Wars show. But that's going to bring in a lot of people. You're bringing Ahmed Best. Like, this is the guy that went from Jar Jar Binks to... I mean, he's got his own... He's given himself a description on Instagram. He's Jedi Master Kellerin Beck. He's got a name. He's got a bio. He's got everything. He was able to build his own lightsaber not from Star Wars land, but I'm guessing the way canon's going to work now is that when people design lightsabers, they're going to get like the 100, 200 components or whatever, so people can build it if they wanted to. But I think it's probably a combination because he's got Ahmed Best is a producing credit as well. I think there's probably a coming together of minds where a decision was made, and he just think, well, you know what, why don't I host it too? Why not be a Jedi Master? I've been a Gungan. You've all seen me as another species, but you've not seen me as me. So I think that could have been him as well.
Without doubt. And I think it's a great move, and I think especially if them putting it now, like you said earlier at the very start, really on the YouTube channel, the YouTube Kids, Star Wars Kids, sorry, that rather than putting it behind somewhere where it would have to be a paid for thing, is an absolute move of genius. I know personally, my son spends a lot of time on Star Wars Kids. He turns 5 tomorrow. And he adores it. That's where he's learned a lot of his Star Wars from, watching the Galaxy Adventures things. Like, learned so much about Star Wars from, and he's seen the movies like once, some of them twice, but not in big chunks. But he'll sit and he'll watch Galaxy Adventures on a roll over and over again, just watching these scenes too. So he's very aware of characters and planets and ships. And it really brought him to Star Wars in a way that it hadn't with watching the movies. And I think this kind of things, there are things on kids' TV, and I don't know what it's called. It's on like a CBeebies channel or something where it's like a pirate ship, and they do these kind of things like challenges and silly games and rolling around in foam and things like that. So I think this is something that certainly, I know when I show this to my son tomorrow, I'll let him watch this, and it will enthrall him for 20. It's got a runtime of like 24 minutes. He will be enthralled for that full 24 minutes, especially because it's around Star Wars. To then have the Ahmed Best come in and play this character to be this Jedi is such a nice move, and not that kids would ever know. Like, the kids who are watching this will never ever be like, well, not right now when they're thinking it's Jar Jar. They'll never ever take that from it. This is more for us and people of fans of the saga who are like, wow, that is great for that actor to now be this betrayal. I think when you mentioned the title of what this should be, From Gungan to Jedi, and it's a journey that you would never ever have thought for Ahmed Best to get to be now back in Star Wars as a Jedi. It just seems such the right move for him, and I'm so happy for him that he's going to come back in. And I mean, I've actually just watched a little bit of the actual show just while I was sitting here. The smile on his face while he is doing this show, you can almost see the joy. Not just like a fake host smile of like, I'm doing a show and I'm gonna, like I do all the time. Just yeah, like he looks like he's got actual. Yeah, too right. Like, he's got absolute real joy for what he's doing, and that makes it even better for me. And I'm over the moon that he's got this happening.
Yeah, but from what I've seen, he has a very much a Chewie we're home kind of reaction to being back in the fold and kind of being back in Star Wars and hosting the show. And it's one of those things, of course, so all three of us have grown up in slightly different eras. As I said, for George and I, it was definitely Jungle Run, of course, Raven as well. There's other bits and pieces. You always had the show has had, and Funhouse, of course, Dave talked about it there. The show, the format of the show has existed in various forms for years. We all know Japan's crazy obsession with the style of show, but the format itself has been around for such a while. But to do it in the Star Wars way and to get the kids involved, so when we had this discussion last week, the fact that it had been moved from Disney Plus to YouTube, I said at the time, I think it's a very good move, partly because it will get kids involved. People don't necessarily have Disney Plus. It's not that YouTube is more accessible, and it's a way to get the kids more involved easier, and will maybe persuade people to get Disney Plus. Yes, a bit of a marketing ploy, but also it does get it out there more for more people to see. And I think it's a great move for Ahmed to do, and I think it's nice for him to be back in the fold. Of course, as you said, George, you met him at Celebration in Chicago, and if I get the opportunity, I will meet him again. So, because of course, when I was at that age, ripe old age of 8, yeah, I was the perfect age for Jar Jar. I loved seeing him in the film, in episode 1, 2, and 3, of course. And yeah, I understand the backlash, and of course, it's why I think the three of us, especially at the age we are now, are empathetic towards Kaimari Chan and towards the hateful, the sequel trilogy cast, is because we experienced, although not as viscerally, we experienced the same sort of backlash to the prequels. We've all stood up and we've all said our piece. I've said this many times on the show, my own story of having to defend my love of the prequels in front of my lecture at uni. And it's one of those things that for now, I think his journey has come full circle, and it's a really nice way to see him not only be brought back, but by the community, not just the company. The company, as you said, George, has looked after him for all these years. They didn't have to. They've done it off their own volition, their own back. And George Lucas especially wants to make sure he was okay, and of course had that relationship from working with him. And I think now the company's in such a place where they have now rewarded him for those years and gone, here you go, we want to bring you back. And of course, Celebration, as you said, when we had Hayden Christensen come back for the first time, he wasn't sure of the reaction he was going to get. And of course, he was probably going to get a more positive reaction off the bat than Ahmed Best. Just more of a guaranteed positive reaction. Not that we didn't think Ahmed Best wouldn't. I'm just saying I think he would get guaranteed a more positive reaction. But when he did come out, you did see him take just a brief second of relief and almost not expecting it. And I'm glad that that has been the case.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think with Jar Jar, it's harder than Anakin because, well, it's not really harder. It's the same thing. People just went for someone that shouldn't have. They forget how young Ahmed Best was. He was like 25, 26 when he did Phantom Menace. Like,
yeah,
that's young still. Hayden was, 19, 20 on Attack of the Clones. Jake Lloyd was, 11?
Yeah.
Natalie Portman did well to come out of it because she had a career before and she's had one after as well, but she was 17. And I think people forget how young these people are when they do things like Star Wars. Even Daisy Ridley was 21, I think. Yeah. 21, 22. John Boyega was 23 and did
we forget also how young Ewan McGregor was when he started in episode 1.
And this is the thing, and people forget that they just go to attack them because they were all in their 30s, 40s as well. That's the worst thing. These people were grown up. They weren't 10-year-olds. They weren't 16-year-olds. You know, the worst thing about this generation I'm in is that because we grew up with the memes, the prequels, and everything like that, they're so self-centered on that sort of side of it, where they got the social media angle to just attack people left, right, and center, which is what a lot of it has been. And the contrast between people criticizing people for rightfully protesting on my Facebook, who I know are people that only share posts about how Disney ruined Star Wars, there's a certain comparison one can choose to make if they want to delve into that, to kind of get political and current, but different conversation. But yeah, the Ahmed Best of it, it's such an incredible journey. I mean, I'm going to read out his Instagram here because he put a photo up last week, right? A photo of his character, and he's written a description. This is he's got a purple lightsaber. Okay, the idea behind his lightsaber is the balance of peace and justice. He chose purple because it's between both the red and the blue. He mentions the lever on his hilt is large enough for one hand. He took inspiration from a martial arts he studied when he was younger for a one-handed style of fighting. His character is nicknamed the Bladed Hand for effectiveness, with the one-handed lightsaber and the empty hand which will wield the Force. If that isn't already like a Star Wars databank entry or a Pablo Hidalgo dictionary, like
that.
You know, this is martial arts he's done younger, and he's been able to put that into a Star Wars style. It's remarkable. And there's actually 2 episodes that have been uploaded. So there's 45 minutes for people that want to watch it later on. But it's a really nice journey. And I think this role, I'm not going to say it's his final role. We don't know that. I'm probably sure he's going to be voicing Jar Jar in multiple Star Wars things for the years to come. But from where we are in 99 to 2020, going from, you know, Jar Jar to this Jedi Master, producing as well and hosting his own Star Wars series. And he did say as well, he is the first black lead in a Star Wars production, which it kind of hit me too. I was like, you know what, it's bang on. because you forget of John Boyega that he's in a trio, but he's not the lead. Sam Jackson was a supporting actor. Lando was a supporting actor, and you haven't actually had it. Granted, it's different. It's TV and stuff, but he's producing it as well. So if people want to get contextual, there's things to take away from that too. And I'm just really excited to see it. I think as him starring and being a producer, I think he's probably put a lot of passion into this as well as a lot of his time and ability. And if that pays off, firstly, people are going to remember this is going to be a kid show. That's the main thing I'm going to have going into this, which I'm fine with because I'm just going to be envious. But dear life, if there are people that are expecting a Disney Plus $100 million Mandalorian style kid show, then they're in for a surprise. I'll give them that.
Yes, I mean
they should have done this in the volume. You're right.
Oh, wow. I mean, that would have been a bit OTT, but at the same time, that would have been cool. So it would have been Star Wars, you are in Star Wars. Here you go, have fun. Oh dear, but I mean, to be fair, it's a cool thing to have, and I think it's very good that he has been brought back into the fold. And I want to wrap the show up by just talk about our final thoughts about the legacy of Ahmed Best, what we think about him, and where he's gone from to where he is now. I mean, we spoke a couple weeks ago about the hero's journey. Our entire show was dedicated to the hero's journey, talking about Luke, Rey, and Anakin and their journeys and where they went from to where they went to. And of course, with Luke, you have the farm boy to Jedi Master. Well, here we have Gungan to Jedi, and I think it's a really good show to talk about a subject that, yes, it's kind of poignant at the time when we talk about the Black Lives Matter movement. Of course, it's happening in the current state of the world here in 2020, but also just from what has happened in his own personal life to where he is now. I cannot give Lucasfilm enough credit for this one. I think it's a really good move. But George, we'll come to you on your thoughts.
I just think you're absolutely spot on. We spoke about the hero's journey, and as far as journeys go, this is certainly one. I'm not going to sit there and say zero to hero. It's not that at all. He's someone that's had, I think, fair to say, a very difficult journey in this franchise, but time's been an ally, and luckily that was able to steer it to the right direction. And it's something that I can hope to continue for actors that will be in this situation for the years to come, where people want to jump on their backs and get them quickly because of something they were in, just for doing their job, just for being in a film. It goes to show that I'm not proving anything that's happened to him in the past, but good things do come to those who wait. And if there's someone that deserves, I'm not even going to say second chance because it's not a second chance. If there's someone that deserves like a second role, a leading role in the same franchise, then absolutely you start with Ahmed Best at the list. And there's a couple of people who you can go to next if they really wanted to. But this is a bit different. This doesn't feel like a sort of, you got bullied, here's a show. It doesn't feel like that at all. No, at all. This was someone that's respecting Lucasfilm, that's had a really good idea. And so, why don't I host this as well as produce it? And I think they said, this is a great idea. So I'm kind of in that sense of it where he's just a really interesting character and such a lovely person as well. Honestly, when this tour happens, I'm gonna be there. I encourage everyone watching this to go to it. I can guarantee that there's going to be more stories in there than we've probably heard as well, which is going to be kind of frightening at the same time. But at the same time, it's going to be really interesting hearing him talk about it.
I can only echo those sentiments. The move that he's now made back into the fold of Lucasfilm, for being the producer on this show, for being the lead on this show, tells you everything about this man's journey from where he was to how he felt mentally after what he'd gone through, to now being full of smiles, and the posts he's put, like George read out on Instagram, of how into this he actually is. I don't think he can kind of cover it succinctly in words to say how, apart from his own mouth, that he is so happy to be back in Star Wars and hopefully enjoying life again. And I know with his son, that's why he put that post up on Twitter, that he took his son to that spot. And I'm hoping that this has kind of enabled him to have closure on that time in his life with Star Wars, to now being able to be proud of where he has gotten to, and to where he's now taking him, not just himself forward, but his character inside of Star Wars forward as well. I hope he's really, really, really pleased with where he's gotten to.
Indeed. It's one of those things with, as I said at the beginning of the segment, that his journey has gone from one of hype to disappointment to the very depths of his soul to now being brought back and being re-embraced and having having the strength to continue go forward and now have this show. It's a show that, although is not aimed at the three of us, I'm sure the three of us will go and give it at least a watch and see. I know, Dave, you said you're going to, of course, show it to your son, who is, of course, the perfect age to watch this. But it's a show that, we wish was around when we were kids, that we could go on it. Of course, we are far too old, even with a dab of makeup and a fake ID. I don't think we'd quite pass off to be young enough for it, but we may get it going. George is a baby face; he can get away with it. I don't think Dave, you or I can. Especially
hey, I'll have none of that, sir. Once this beard comes off, I look like 6.
Yeah. Sure, the baldness may actually impact as well. Once the Force of Star Wars podcast, and yet here we are taking the mick out of each other because that's just how it works. I mean, we are British, exactly what we do. But yes, it's one of the things, as I said, this show is something that I will probably go and give a watch, see how it goes. But as I said, to see his journey to go from someone who was unfortunately shunned, and that's the biggest understatement I can put on those words, to where he is now, I am very thankful that there's the case that he's been given this shot, and I'm thankful he's been embraced by the fans again, given this opportunity.
No, absolutely.
Indeed. So, are we having any final thoughts, or is that about everything for tonight's show, guys?
I think that's everything with me.
Yeah, I just want to be a quick thank you for anyone who's watched the toy shelf video that we put up of the Falcon video. There is another toy shelf coming this weekend, which is around a Bluetooth speaker, which has arrived. So got a full unboxing video of that and showing the actual speaker itself, and it's beautiful, and you should see it. And yeah, so that'll be coming probably Saturday or Sunday. That should be up on the channel.
Indeed, I'm working very hard on some other bits and pieces myself. Yes, the Dooku Jedi Lost video has been very delayed through my own life, but that will be getting there at some point. I'm working hard on getting that done. Star Wars, I will now be doing a monthly show for that as well. For the new show, that will probably be out next week by the looks of things with my own schedule. And of course, there's another series coming as well, so my own custom-built lightsaber that I have done the unboxing for. It's not up on the channel yet, but it's ready to go. That will hopefully be up at the end of the week as well. So yeah, we have plenty of content coming over basically for the next few weeks, so just stay tuned, and I think that's about it. So yes, as usual, all I have to say is thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Ones of Force Stars Podcast, at the Force Podcast. You can find the video for this later on our Facebook and YouTube pages, and of course the audio version will be on our Spotify, Podbean, Stitcher, and iTunes. So until next time, we've been Ones of the Force. May the Force be with you. Good night.